study of human behavior, trying to find out why people act as they do. Investigations that reveal more to us about ourselves, that begin to answer the question, what is a human being from a psychological point of view? Some psychologists are concerned with physical factors in human behavior. One describes his work.
Our tools and methods are like those of a physician. We have devices we use to measure physical reactions, to analyze blood and the secretions of ductless glands. We've learned that the nervous system matures relatively slowly. We've learned that people have innate forms of behavior, reflexes. If your eyes blinked, that was a reflex. A child's toes curl when the sole of his foot is rubbed, also a reflex. We've found that learning depends on physical as well as mental considerations. For instance, a certain physical readiness has to exist before a person can learn to read. Many of us believe that before age 6, the average child can't learn to read, no matter how much training he gets. But around 6, reading readiness occurs. Vision, hearing, and language become coordinated, and he learns to read.
Human behavior in terms of physical development. Other scientists investigate perception, how the human organism selects information from the environment.
Our test provides stimuli people can see, hear, or feel. Standardized test cards. We know how thousands of people have responded to them over the years. And a variety of bells, alarms, timers, and other devices that produce and measure stimuli. Using them, we've learned about the concept of focus, how a person's attention is focused on certain stimuli. What do you see? The average person focuses his attention on the ball carrier. He barely perceives the many other details. Focus often shifts. Do you see a white vase on a black background? Now, as your attention shifts, do you see black profiles of two people facing each other? We've learned that no matter how confusing the clues are, a person's perceptions make size, brightness, direction, and depth seem logical and consistent.
The study of perception in human behavior. Other behavioral scientists investigate learning.
We use a number of tests, puzzles, and problems to study learning. Nonverbal tests do not require a knowledge of language. Verbal ones do. Some experiments provide a reward for one sort of answer and punishment, such as a mild electric shock, for another. Can you learn the path through the maze? Can you find your way through this maze any faster if we tell you that your response will be graded by your teacher? Whether or not your teacher actually graded you, it's a fact that the two learning tasks were equally difficult. The difference was that the promise of grading may have increased your motivation to learn. Also, the first maze gave you practice in solving the second one. We found that motivation, practice, repetition, and concentration are important in learning. Many of the experiments we use are based on the work of Ivan Pavlov, a Russian physiologist. Pavlov inserted a tube in a dog's mouth to drain off saliva. A bell was sounded when food was offered to the dog. A dog normally salivates over food, but in time this dog salivated at the sound of the bell, even with no food present. This type of learning is conditioning. Some believe it's the basis of all learning. Learning experiments often have practical aspects. For example, the rotary pursuit test is used by the Air Force to examine certain aviation aptitudes.
Other scientists study human emotions.
An emotion itself can't be seen or measured, but polygraphs and other devices help us recognize emotional responses, changes in breathing pattern, the electrical conductivity of the skin, blood pressure and pulse rate, blood volume and oxygen content. Using these techniques and asking people to describe their emotional feelings, we've learned that the tendency toward some emotional patterns is probably inherited. But the way emotions develop is probably learned. Were you startled? The startle pattern is both an emotional response and a reflex. Normally, the eyes of a startled person blink, and the mouth widens in the suggestion of a grin.
The study of emotions. Another investigator studies intelligence and aptitudes.
The tools we use are intelligence and aptitude tests, the kind that are given in many schools. Some require a person to arrange blocks in a particular pattern. We believe fast, correct performance indicates intelligence. Other tests call on people to recognize similarities and differences. Which of the 6 figures to the right look exactly like the one to the left, except for position? Which of these figures look exactly like the one to the left, except for position? We believe that many such test items together can give a profile of intelligence and aptitudes. Testing many people, we found that a person's problem-solving ability is related to language, the ability to generalize, and a number of other factors. We plot test performances of a number of subjects on curves. The high point on a curve indicates the score most frequently earned on a particular test. And we assume that people who earn similar scores resemble each other in certain important ways.
Intelligence and aptitudes. Social behavior is investigated by other scientists.
Our point of view is that people are uniquely human because we gather in social groups. A street gang, a football team, a family, all are social groups. Even the class you're in now is a social group. Every group has leaders, followers, special roles that people play. The role of the clown, the role of respected elder member. Every group has ways of rewarding people or punishing them. People who study social behavior may investigate and report on social systems that exist in all groups, hours to come and go, ways of getting other members' attention, and so on.
Now, all of you in the group, raise your right hands high.
Did you consider me a leader for your group? Maybe you'll want to discuss why you did or didn't react. Who, if anyone, moved first? Who looked to your teacher or friends for approval?
Social behavior. How people behave in groups. Studying your class, your club, your family, you can understand the work of scientists who investigate social behavior. Their study, along with studies in intelligence and aptitudes, emotions, learning, perception, and physical development reveal to us more about the ways in which we think and act, human behavior.